At this time, we're going to have the brief history of the Bassa people by our National Secretary General. Let's put our hands together and welcome him to this.
Okay, I wish I had a PowerPoint, but do not. I'm going to be very brief. Just want to say a little bit about us, the Bassa people. I started the very journey finding my identity, who am I, a son of the Bassa soil in Liberia. And throughout this research, I've come to know a little more about our history. You know, the Bassa people, where did we come from? That's a big question we need to ask ourselves. The Bassa people origin comes from the Bassa Empire, which fell in 6th century AD. And our people migrated after that. They went throughout what is now called West Africa. And that didn't stop them, but then I asked myself, what happened, where did they come from? Before the Bassa Empire. They came from Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, which means black stone. And that's just a little I'm going to say about it. But then, if we look at us in like, where can we find us in the world today? We are in Liberia, we are in Sierra Leone, we are in Ivory Coast, we are in Nigeria, Bassa, we are in Cameroon, and we also research found us in the West Indies, and also found us in Brazil. An interesting thing about finding us in Brazil, I get to realize, I thought after the Bassa Empire fell, our people went farther Brazil. But as I went farther, I realized that the first bunch of slaves kidnapped on the Bassa Cove in Liberia were the Bassa people. So our people ended up in Brazil by means of slavery. Then we come to our Bassa language. Our language, in short, is this vast script. It got deep history. But then we move farther. In Brazil, there was a bachelor professor by the name of Dr. Luis. He had a PhD in chemistry from Syracuse University. So he went to Brazil and he saw people speaking the Bassa language. So then he came back and said we have to develop our script, the vast script. And he moved to Liberia. And he was the one that funded the first printing press to print the Bassa language. So our language is so deep in origin. Some historians trace our language back to 500 BC. That's where some historians trace our language. And our language in the New World, the Brazil and the West Indian, history tells us that it was there and introduced by some Bassa family. So the great thing, we come from the 25 dynasty of Egypt. We got Bassa root in that area. But here's an interesting part of our story. More than 33,910 Bassa people were taken from Liberia into slavery. So that's how we find ourselves in the West Indians and find ourselves in Brazil. And I will conclude with this. The Bassa people and the founding of Liberia. On December 15, 1821, a dead and Bassa chief are in negotiation with Dr. Eli Harris of the ACS for the purchase of a small island off Cape Mesurado to reset the free slave. The Bassa chief was Gregoire, which meant George, who governed a Mamba Bassa town at the foot of Cape Mesurado with less than 20 houses. So when the negotiation happened in the funding of Liberia, one of the chief George, was a Bassa man. So we come from great history, and we must embrace our culture and our identity, and be proud of who we are. We are leaders, we are kings, we are queens. So I will pause right here, and I will invite Dr. Amos Gbaa, and he's going to tell a little about our culture in about 12 to 15 minutes. It's a very welcome.
I almost want to say praise the Lord because I want to thank the secretary for what he said. And what I want to remind you is there's a booklet to the book there. Everything he said in the rural book. So you can purchase this for $10 for one if you want to. And I will be talking about being the language, the written vast script that the Bassa people have. Because you already gave us a historical background, where we come from and so on. So what I want to talk about in brief is about the language and the written document that we have. You see, I want to first begin with the Bassa culture have been forgotten and replaced by other traditional oral culture from different countries. And let me give you a short example before I go on. You see, the Bassa people, when the people are celebrating and they want to make contribution, they will come there to call the attention of the people and say, "Have you been around?" And they say, "Yeah." Then they say, "Mary, they say, "Glad." Then whatever contribution they want to do before they do it. This time, we are following the Nigerian people when any celebration or wedding, they take the money and leave, spreading on the person, and the people got to pick up the money from the ground. That's one of the culture that we are losing. And the only time we see Bassa men make contribution of money and put it on the ground is their body. When somebody dies, that's the only time they do that. So that's the first thing I want to call your attention on, that we are losing our culture. Now, reclaiming the Bassa heritage, that's the thing for this conference. And I want to suggest 4 different ways we can reclaim our culture. The first is by learning to read and write the Bassa language ourselves. We say that we lost, if you don't lost something, you can't reclaim it. If I got my chain missing and I can't find it, and I got it from somebody and they say, "Well, I found it from," I had to reclaim that because I own it. And that's how the Bassa people own their tradition. But the Western culture has taken it away from us. Especially, as I say, I want to focus on the language. There is no Bassa man right now we stand here to give 2 sentences without adding English along it. Every word that the English people have, it has, it's a Bassa word, unless they were introduced from different countries. For example, the Portuguese, when they first came to Liberia, when I say that people don't believe it until I continue and explain. They brought pineapple, they brought pawpaw. And because pawpaw and pineapple were introduced to the Bassa people, they don't know the Bassa name for that. We have to describe it. For example, we got pumpkin. The Bassa name for pumpkin is Nguyen. So the pawpaw is looking at the Nguyen, and therefore they say, "We Nguyen." Why they add a P there for? It's because they don't know it. The same way with the pineapple. People. That's not Bassa name for it. We have something they call pork in the bush, and some people they sometimes they say black pepper. And some the Bassa people believe that we have to insult that particular wild fruit before you take it, before you take your egg, it will be rotten. I don't know how true it is. So they will cost before they pick it up, and they call pork. So once we don't have that pineapple in the Bassa culture, they say this is a unreal pork. That's why they call it big buffalo. So some of the things we have to go back. Those are the things that Western culture have taken away from us, and we got to claim it. And how do we do it? I suggest 4 ways. The first one is that, as I said, we have to learn the language ourselves. This includes learning about the history of the Bassa language. Dr. Lewis, that he just mentioned, our secretary just mentioned, he is the one who invented the character of the letter called Va. And where did he get it from? There was a man called Diura, a Bassa man, chief way back, called Diura, from the Zobuch. And he usually teach how to communicate on a leaf. They put a T mark on a leaf, and then they put it on the row or the intersection of the row, and somebody who he writing it to, when they look at it, they will be completely read it. That's a T mark Dr. Lewis used to, if you read that book, you will know that he telling me know that was some kind of working going on in Bassa when he went to learn. So, you know, I know I have a few minutes, but let me get the 4 points. And maybe I'll talk more tomorrow. So he used the T-Mac and developed that character of the letter. The reason we are using the international format right now is when the American people went, the missionary went to translate the Bible, that writing the vast script was not, it cannot be text. I mean, they can't write the whole Bible with their hands. In fact, if you look at the history, you will find out that Dr. Lewis manufactured the very first printing press. And they used to print that. But since they brought it to the University of Liberia, we heard that it was in the charge of the care of Joseph Ayi then, and we don't know what happened to it. From that time, they never invented any other typewriter. So the people said, well, we can translate the whole Bible into writing. And that's how they decided to use the international format. The second thing is by teaching our children and grandchildren the heritage. Yes. The heritage is going away completely because our children that we have, they don't even know how to speak the Bassa. So because they don't know how to speak it, their children, especially when they walk in, everybody start all over. People speaking Spanish, people speaking French, and that's why their children learn how to speak. They don't know the Bassa. So if we ourselves learn the Bassa and teach our children, then we'll be able to claim it in the future. But if we don't do that, we'll be gone. Thirdly, by getting closer to and learning from elderly Bassa people who know the culture. The modern children these days, when they are educated, they forget about the elderly men and women. They don't want to come around them. But they're where you have to learn the culture because they are the ones who know the culture. And they can help you to learn it yourself. The fourth one, which is the last but not the least, by being strong to reject cultural practices that threaten to replace our own. As an example that I showed here, I was giving them up. So, my presentation, I did not know that the secretary was going to go all the detail, but I have almost similar things. And the last thing that I want to say in short before I sit down is that, hello? we have to make some effort, especially, you know, what we say, big organization of the Bassa people. You got to make some effort for every Bassa person to learn how to read and write Bassa. You know why? What I'm going to say, if Honorable Zuka will attest to that, or if I'm lying, will say. But Bassa has been approved some way in Liberia to be taught in colleges. A few years ago when I went to Liberia, they had their college employ me. I taught them for 2 months. Taught Bassa in the college for 2 months. So, I went to the Minister of Education, the Deputy Minister of Education, Mr. Duku, Honorable Duku. He and myself discussed for 3 hours about this. And the concern now is, if the Bassa language will be taught in schools, where do we get a textbook from? I promise him. I said, when I come back, and if the government will give me the privilege or the opportunity to write textbook, I will do it. And I started it already. Right to the place there that combines Bassa stories. Bassa stories, Bassa calendar, everything that the Cree people do, the Bassa people can do it. So we can't just base on the English language and forget our mother tongue. Thank you very much.